Brent, welcome back to the show. I'm excited for this conversation because we've got two big races and you guys are in the mix in both.
Yeah, it's actually looking pretty darn good in both of them, especially compared to like 2 weeks ago.
I know. This is why I love this. This is a perfect Friday conversation. The funny part about this is of all of the people, you guys are literally like are polling for this Virginia Attorney General race. And I've got a lot of thoughts on this because I got to believe the entire ticket's getting dragged down, but you just got out of the field. You guys are the go-to people right now when it comes to Virginia. So let's just start. The first question that you guys address in your polling, there's a lot of concern about when people vote because the question is, Virginia voting started late September. And so how many people have actually already voted according to your poll?
That is a great question and one that we spend a lot of time on in Virginia. I mean, I think if this year is a great example as to why we should get rid of really early voting. We would not have a Senator John Fetterman were it not for really, really early voting. And I think when we look at this Virginia AG's race, it would be even better if there weren't several 100,000 votes already banked. And so, we're looking at anywhere. Our poll has it at 13.5% because we're going off of folks who have told us that. When you look at the file, the voter file, as those get returned every night from the different counties to the voter file vendors, it could be upwards of 15 or a little bit more. There are areas of the state where it's higher, somewhere it's lower, but there's still plenty of runway, which is the really encouraging part. That even though you've got, let's just say 15% of folks have already put their vote in, prior to the scandal coming out, there's still a lot of runway left, and a lot of people who need to see the message. That was really shocking to me in the poll.
All right, so the generic ballot. The next question on your poll: who just random Republican versus random Democrat? Where does it stand, and how has it changed?
So if we go to right after Labor Day, the Democrats had a 7-point lead on this question. And for those of you who are normal and don't look at polling all day long like Sean and I do, the generic ballot means you're not putting a name to it. For your House of Delegates race, because that's what they call their legislature there that's up right now, you want the Democrat or the Republican. And it's a really good indicator for us as we look at how does that compare to these named races like AG, like governor and others. And so that was a Democrat 7-point lead coming out of Labor Day. And then we're now sitting at that being only a 5-point lead, a 4.5-point lead. And so that's a really good movement that you don't traditionally see environmental movements like that. And I think that we're actually catching the beginning of a trend in this data.
All right, I hate to interrupt this conversation, but tonight, if you are looking for a great night's sleep, I'm going to help you big time. I switched over to Boll and Branch sheets, and my goodness, they have made a huge difference. They are so comfortable to get into every night. I love them so much. I literally ordered a second pair the other night and paid for them myself. That's how great these things are. And you can join me as well. The thread count, the quality is unbelievable. There's a 30-day guarantee, so you literally have nothing to lose. If you want a better night's sleep, it starts with your bedding. Go to bollandbranch.com/Spicer to save 15%. That's BOLLAND branch.com/Spicer for 15% off and free shipping. bollandbranch.com/Spicer for a great night's sleep. All right, back to the conversation. It's not time to go to sleep just yet. So let's get in. We'll start. I know the top of the ticket is the governor, then a lieutenant governor, then the AG, but you guys are really focused. We'll get to both of those other races, but all the attention, all the media is focused on this race between Republican incumbent Attorney General Jason Miyares and Democrat Jay Jones, who technically is a former delegate, but that's a whole nother story. The guy basically just dropped out of nowhere. I don't know that we need to get into that. Walk us through how the race has changed since you were in the field last.
Yeah, these AG races tend to be pretty low name ID affairs. And what I mean by that is that even come election day, a large chunk of voters don't know who the candidates are for AG. Even in a state like Virginia that has Wild West campaign finance, where anybody and everybody can give as much money as they want to these races. And so going back to right after Labor Day, Jason Miyares had a more favorable image slightly than Jay Jones did. Both of them had about 21% unfavorability. So there wasn't much daylight between the two of them from an image perspective of how voters viewed them and how many voters knew of the two candidates. Well, that changed. That changed significantly in this poll that we just conducted this week. We started on beginning of the week, and now Jason Miyares has really increased his name ID. He's at 37% favorability, but the real story is this Jay Jones, and he's a bad dude, and voters are starting to see this. He went from 20% unfavorability to 44% unfavorability, and let me tell you, you don't see numbers like that even in major spending races. I mean, I'm involved in some races last year and this coming year where you would see millions of dollars get spent attacking a candidate and their unfavorability would move 7 points. This dude more than doubled his unfavorability, and I really think the bulk of that was simply this earned media story of the text messages.
Okay, so that's the unfavorability. What about the head-to-head? How has that changed Miyares versus Jay Jones? Like head-to-head from where you were last time to where we are now?
Yeah, so let's take it in the context of the generic ballot, where we saw that go from 7 to 4.5. So was that 2.5 points of environmental movement that occurred? And but this race saw a lot more movement. So we had Jason down by 3, the Republican Jason Miyares down by 3 coming out of Labor Day, and then this week that shifted to head by 2. I mean, if we like to round numbers and then do the math, but if you take the 0.1% and do the math, he actually moved 6 points in that approach to it, which is unheard of. You just don't see that type of movement, especially in a purple to blue state like Virginia.
And by the way, that's before Miyares dropped like his new ads, right? So, I mean, this is just off what we call earned media. That's the kind of stuff that you see on your TV, your newspaper, random websites. That's before any real ads get behind it, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, cause I had a lot of people when you guys posted that head-to-head first on Twitter, who said to me, gosh, don't you think it should have moved more? And my answer was, yeah, but remember, like it could be cresting and you're just stopping and taking a snapshot. I got to believe that it's gotten worse for him. For Jay Jones, the Democrat, and that if you actually every day, I got to believe that Miyares is probably pulling out even further.
Yeah, and Winsome-Sears, the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia, is also running ads with that same message and then essentially tying Spanberger, the Democrat, to Jay Jones, which is it's the exact strategy we need. I mean, I wish national Republicans would come in here and dump $10 million on this and say all the Democrats that are on the ticket have endorsed this guy. 0 of the Democrats on the ticket, whether it's a statewide candidate or a House of Delegates candidate, none of these people have said this guy should drop out. They support him.
I'm glad you said that, Brent, because I mean, to the extent that anyone cares what I have to say, and I do live in the Commonwealth here, that I've been screaming from the rooftops, you got a gift. Open the gift and just ride it. Don't talk about anything else, nothing else. I saw an ad that Miyares put out about his driving. You know, he's going 116 and on I-64. I'm like, no, nothing else for the next 20 something days. All you should talk about is this guy's fitness for office.
Yeah, and I do think that 116, because if you look at what would have happened to you or me if we were driving 116 miles an hour, we'd be spending a year in jail.
Sure. Fair enough. And I get that. And there's a whole side story about how he then had to do community service and he did it for his own political action committee. I get it. But I'm telling you, when you've got somebody sending text saying they want to assassinate the Speaker of the House and then watch his wife hold his dead child in her hands, like you don't need anything else. Drive that every day, all day.
And on top of that, so I'm not a lawyer, so don't hold me to this, but I was told by somebody, by a lawyer, that had this been a domestic situation, so let's say that was him and a girlfriend, and instead of the target being the Republican Speaker of the House, if he said he was going to do that to her, she said stop 3 times and he kept going. That would be jail time for him if this was a domestic situation.
By the way, that's
what needs to get out there. You got to contextualize the story too, on top of the fact that he's just a complete dirtbag.
100%. Because I know all the news was, hey, he made this threat against Todd Gilbert, the former Speaker of the House. Okay, that's bad. Then to your point, then the second point is, right, there's more to the text, which is, I want to see his wife hold his dead child in her arms, right? That's sick. And then to your point, what's happening in between is this delegate that he's texting.
A Republican delegate.
Republican delegate, Carrie Corner, is saying, stop. She's basically like, hey, dude, shut up. I'm trying to help you, right? And he's like, no. I have more offensive things to say. I'm not done.
Yeah, it's disgusting when a Republican should never stand up and say we need to tone it down on both sides. This is not a both sides problem. And 100%. Democrats have proved that over the last 4 weeks.
I know. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, not just Virginia, but every Democrat, every Republican should go after every Democrat and say, you've been silent on this issue. You didn't say anything. You talk about both sides. You talk about the temperature being down, and you've been silent. We should make every Democrat in this country own this issue.
I was getting ready this morning and thinking back to when I started running races 20 something years ago. And every race, every general election I ran, the Democrats were labeling us extreme. And you know what? To middle of the road voters, we probably were considered extreme to them. And I was pondering that this morning. I'm like, I'm no longer in the party of extreme. It's the Democrats who are completely extreme now.
Oh, and by the way, what was quote unquote considered extreme back then was he wants to cut taxes 65%. It was policy. It wasn't, I want to shoot you and assassinate you. That wasn't the debate. We were debating policy 20 years ago, Brent. I remember my first race. It was like, you want to increase the size of government more than I do. I want to do less. Those are policy differences, not I want to kill you and your child.
100%.
All right. You mentioned Winsome Sears. She is the current lieutenant governor, candidate for governor of Virginia. She's running against Abigail Spanberger, former Democratic congresswoman. Talk about the position of that race. Where was it and where is it now?
She was in our data in September, early September. She was down by 7. Other polls had her down by more. And now we only have her down by 4. So this Jay Jones texting scandal is hurting Democrats up and down the ticket. So we had Spanberger lose 1 point, and we had Winsome pick up 2 in a race where Abigail Spanberger is just shellacking Winsome Sears on television and on YouTube. I watch television on streaming services. I cannot turn on a YouTube. My children cannot turn on a YouTube video at our house to watch something funny without an ad coming on to attack Winsome Sears. And so all that, considering that she still was able to improve, and this shows the juice that this issue has behind it if Republicans will fund it. That's the $1 million question, right? How much are they willing to come in and push this over the top? Because I keep referring to this as the Terry McAuliffe moment of this cycle. Terry McAuliffe was the Democratic nominee, the former governor, taking on Glenn Youngkin last time. And he started saying parents don't have any rights when it comes to the education of their children. And Glenn Youngkin rode that thing like a bullet train to victory. Yep. I just think Republicans need to do this again. But let's kind of round out the 3 constitutional offices, because this is one that I thought was interesting. John Reed is the Republican nominee. He's former radio talk show host, WRVA, out of Richmond. His dad was involved in Republican politics, so very big Henrico County family down there in the middle of Virginia. And then the Democrat, her name is Ghazala Hashmi. Is that right? Your guess is as good as mine on that one.
I just don't know if I'm Ghazala Hashmi. Tell us where that race is and where it is now.
Well, I think this one is less about where it was because it was so under the radar. Neither of these candidates had name ID at all in September. So this is one that I don't necessarily, we had it tied, but we had really high undecideds in that, which makes a lot of sense when you consider neither candidate had any name identification with voters. This race is within 2.5 points, and to the Democrats' advantage currently. But to me, it shows that you've got these really strong coattails on this issue up and down the ticket. I mean, we do a lot of work in the House of Delegates races too, and you're beginning to see improvement there environmentally also in those races. And so, if you'd asked my opinion a month ago of where these Virginia races stood from, governor all the way down to House of Delegates, I would have said precarious, and now I would say encouraging.
The thing that I found interesting in that, just to give the audience a sense, when you polled the lieutenant governor's race, in September, the first week of September, September 7th, you had the race pegged at 44.3 to 44.2. Like statistically, I wash, right? Now, though, John Reed, I get it. I mean, really hasn't lost it. He's still at 44. He's technically at 44.1, but I assume statistically you guys would call that a complete wash. But here's the kicker. The Democrat, whose name I still can't pronounce, Ghazala Hashmi, has actually picked up 2 points. She went from 44.2 to 46.5. Is that a statistical wash, or should we read anything into that?
I think you're just starting to see Democrats pick their person because it's the Democrat. That's not movement in the race per se. That's just a solidifying as we get closer to the election day. And the way I try to look at it is not just the margin between candidates and not just the movement between their ballot share last time and their ballot share, a month later in the poll that we finished up on the 7th of this month, just a couple days ago. It is where are these races stacking up against each other? So we've got Spanberger under 50 now at 49. You got Hashmi at 46.5, and then you have Jones at 43.7. So it's really more the comparison of all of them, and how do we continue to degrade all of their ballot shares by just simply sharing what they believe, which is they want us dead.
Let me ask you this. When you ask what you guys in the polling world call an informed ballot question, which is not just sort of, hey, do you like Jason Mayaris, but you inform them. You basically say, hey, knowing that Jay Jones said this, you actually help them. The race opens up wider, right? So it suddenly goes to 46.4 to Jason Mayaris to 40. That's a 6-point lead, right? So obvious, it's huge, right? I mean, that's literally a game set match. So is it your belief, let me ask you to flip this for a second. Let's just pretend you're Jay Jones's, you're the Democrats pollster, and he says, I'm getting killed on this. The more people find out about it, the more they don't like me. Is it go on attack against Jason Mayaris, or is it own your mistake and go on TV and say, hey, I made some foolish texts. They're a huge mistake. That's not who I am. I'm be better. And I want, what would be better to improve his image?
It is the latter. If it were a governor's race, I would say the strategy would be attack. But because it's an attorney general's race, if you're Jay Jones, you come out and say, I screwed up. And I don't want to say pretend it was a joke. I was upset, and that is no excuse. I don't believe that at all. We probably all said things in text that we don't necessarily believe, but I still I'm not going to use that as an excuse, because here's the problem that Jay Jones faces more than anybody else on the ticket right now is undervote. And that is people vote in the gov race, skip the AG race, and then keep moving on down the ballot. And what Republicans on the flip side need to do is ensure that Democrats, at least a certain type of Democrat, one with a heart, that they decide to stay out because they just can't go vote for any of the Democrats on the ticket. We win the AG's race by undervote, but we win all the races by underparticipation. And Democrats or moderates who normally vote Democrat saying, I just can't do it. I can't go vote for anybody on this ticket if they're going to be complicit with that guy.
So you mentioned the House of Delegates. Obviously, that's a big deal right now in Virginia. The state Senate's not up, but the House of Delegates is. Democrats currently control that. In what you see in the data, is there a shot that Republicans can take back the chamber there?
Working in legislative races is a totally different ballgame because, as I was talking about name ID earlier for the AG candidates, most of these House of Delegate races, your member of the House of Delegates has better name identification than sometimes the person running for governor who's not currently governor. It's just fascinating how that being that close to the electorate, they know who you are. Everybody knows who their member of the House of Delegates
really
is. And it's shocking in these races where money is spent.
Okay.
Okay.
I
don't know who mine is.
Right.
I'm also a Republican in the People's Republic of Arlington. So,
well, I'm right next door to you. Don't worry. I literally forgot. I used to know who it was, but then they kept making it more and more, and I literally wouldn't know if they knocked on my door right now.
It's also a difference between major metro area and regular Virginia. And in regular Virginia, where most every one of these races are, They do know who their member of the House of Delegates is. They know who the person challenging them is. There's enough money being spent to really make these races salient to voters, sometimes more salient than, pre-text message scandal. I would say most people had a better idea of who was running, who they are, and who they're going to vote for in a House of Delegates race than they did the AG's race, because that's just the nature of the beast of a statewide in a big state compared to these local House of Delegates races. So I frame all of that up to say that there's a really good chance Republicans can hold on to where they are and potentially pick up seats in these races. Now, Democrats are just swamping us in spending. That is the real story here. And I wish every Republican could hear this message, and that is start giving money to Republican candidates in states you don't live in. This is what Democrats do. Democrats from all over the country sit there and wait for these Act Blue text messages or emails to show up to be told who they're supposed to give 5, 10, 15, 50 or more dollars to. And they do it every time one of those text messages or emails shows up. It's why you see these people running in races, that a Democrat running in a race who has no business running because it's a deep red seat can raise millions of dollars. It's because Democrats are willing to fund the campaigns of people who aren't even in their areas, and Republicans are not. And if we're going to compete, if we're going to win these House of Delegates races, people have got to get off their wallet and start donating, even if it's $5, $15, $50 to these races. There are a lot of times, if you go look at the Act Blue records, where somebody will give $20 to every single House of Delegate Democrat running in a competitive race by one click. They just go through and click and donate $20 across, and then you scale that across thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000, millions of Democrats who are doing this, and you see how the Democrats have so much more money than we do. And that's one thing Republicans really have to change, is our culture of giving. Like, great, thank you for voting. You also need to start giving. And if that happens in Virginia, from the governor's race down to the House of Delegates races, it's going to be a really good night for Republicans come November 4th.
Brent, just to ballpark, if you're in a competitive delegate race in Virginia, what's a ballpark budget that they're raising right now?
Millions.
Like 3, 2, 1, what?
Yeah, it depends on the race, but yeah, lower single digit millions. I mean, there are conversations going on of like, how do we get $500,000 over to this race for the Republican or that race, or 3 races, they each need to get $500,000.
I think the delegates in Virginia make like $30,000, and you're spending $3 million on a delegate race. That's insane. Couple more things for you. In your what amazed you? You guys talked about news sources, where people get their news source in this Virginia. What stood out to you?
That's a really good question, and I'm going to pull this up here on my screen just so I can speak to the data. We actually just finished a national survey also, and in this survey, we looked at what was the distribution of people who read or get news from certain locations, and then what is their partisanship? Because this is, and thank you for the endorsement of my forthcoming book, America's Emotional Divide. I have a whole chapter that talks about media fragmentation and how it is driving our total disconnect from each other in politics and issues. So I'm going to take this from the national survey because I've got the data sitting in front of me here. But if you're if you get your news from YouTube, for example, there's a pretty even distribution of how many Republicans versus Democrats get their news from YouTube. And you're going to be shocked that this is younger men who get their news from this source. But if you go to a newspaper, for example, newspaper viewers are way more white, way more educated, way older, and way more Democratic than the electorate as a whole. Same thing for national television news. The people who get their news from ABC, NBC, CBS, and the people who read newspapers are super old liberals. They're those crazy boomers you see in those videos in Portland, playing music to save the world. Those people. But Republicans, they're on social media. We're listening to podcasts. We're getting our news from cable. We're just living in totally different worlds. And that, tying this back to Virginia, what's really interesting to me is that the voter group that I think will help determine this election is non-college educated women. And they're the least likely to have seen anything about the J. Jones text. So, and you're not going to get them by throwing up ads on, the NBC nightly news. Right. You're going to get them online. You should be getting them in their text message, in the mailbox, and other places. But that's why these campaigns are so darn expensive, is because fewer people pay attention to what's going on in the news, and you got to spend a lot more money to get in front of them than you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Interesting. Last question I want to ask you guys is, I know that you guys have been keeping an eye on that New Jersey race between Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, and Mikey Sherrill. A lot of stuff coming out of there about how Mikey Sherrill didn't get to walk and graduate with her class at the Naval Academy because of that cheating scandal. Where's the momentum in that race right now, and how close is it?
It's good to be Jack Ciattarelli right now, because the momentum is on his side too. I mean, we went in the field last night with a survey for ourselves in that race, and just looking at the partials, which again, dorky pollster lingo for you. Partials are like, you hadn't got the full amount of people who've taken the survey, but you're looking at those who have. And then you apply some weighting to get an idea of the direction. And so directionally, this race is within the margin of error. And directionally, both Jack Ciattarelli and Mikey Sherrill have nearly identical name identification. And when you look at the openness to vote for both candidates, and you look at what we call the information flow. So where have you seen, read, or heard anything about either of these candidates, on television, in the mailbox, on your phone, online? And then is that information positive, negative, or kind of a mix of the two? The information flow for Mikey Sherrill is abysmal. Like, she's just taking it on the chin and in the ear and then across the knee and in the toe. Like, she's just getting obliterated right now. And so I think we're going to see even further tightening of that race when the information flow looks that bad for her.
All right. Brent Buchanan, I appreciate you and everyone at Cygnal for what you're doing to keep us in the loop in these final 30 days of these two races. Thanks a lot, and really appreciate you sharing the insight. Congrats on the book, by the way.
Well, thank you. And Republicans, open those pocketbooks and start funding these races in New Jersey and Virginia. And that's parties and individuals.
Will do. All right. Thanks, man. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.